Is this one of those stretches where you're looking at the team and you're still seeing a lack of consistency from the group on a night-to-night basis? Like, again, you look at how well they played against Buffalo. Pretty good. Then they come out the next night, and they were terrible against the Islanders, terrible against the Winnipeg Jets. Like, it's just inconsistent hockey is what we've seen out of this group. Now, is this a matter of the team's tired and they really could use a rest? They've just played a lot of hockey. The injuries have really been piling up. Or, again, is it more of a mental mindset, I suppose, of this team just can't seem to play with any amount of consistency?
Yeah, I think that's what it's been over their history. And look, I also think like it's instructive for Brad Treliving and Craig Berube because you come out of the gate and you're not sure what you have, and now you're sort of finding out what you have, right? And maybe you're finding out that you don't have as much as you thought. Maybe you at first, the first few weeks of the season, month and a half of the season, it's like, wow, this defense core is really good. We're not even talking about the defense core. Well, suddenly, you see a couple of moments where McCabe's out for a while, or Tanev is out yesterday.
OEL's dipped. Riley hasn't looked very good the last month or so.
That's another point of emphasis that I would make, that your best defenseman has not really been your best defenseman. Certainly hasn't been providing the offense that Morgan Riley customarily provides, or at least Morgan Riley has provided at peak Morgan Riley. And there's been a lot of talk from Berube about the need for defensemen providing offense.
Yeah.
It just hasn't come. Okay, so that's probably pretty low on the list of their problems right now. But again, what is this opening part of the season revealed? Maybe it's that you don't have as much defense depth as you thought you did. Yanni Hakanpää's been a non-factor. He was one of your marquee signings in the offseason. He's played 2 games total, and we're not sure if we will actually see him play any meaningful games down the stretch here, given the state of his knee health.
Yeah.
So, maybe your shopping list, Al's brother, for March 7th is a little longer than you thought it would be.
Well, so let's get in the festive spirit here,
yeah.
Dave. Let's get in the festive spirit. It's Christmas Eve. There's going to be a lot of gift exchanging over the course of the next, 24 to 48 hours with a lot of families and friends and whatnot. If you were to gift something to the Toronto Maple Leafs, something that they need, something you believe is on their Christmas wish list, what would it be?
Number one would have to be, and I'm not sure how to give this. So I would try maybe the magic amulet endorsed by John Tavares that allegedly has healing properties in the name of goaltender health. Because brother, I don't care about Auston Matthews' health. That's important. Defense health, that's important. But nothing is more important to this team than the health of Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Woll.
See, I push back on that.
Okay.
I think Auston Matthews' health is probably more important. Like, obviously, they're both important. That is very clear. But I would argue that if you had one amulet that you could rub all over these players and get them good health for the rest of the year, you're telling me that you would rub it on the goaltenders as opposed to Auston Matthews?
Yes, because you can win. You won 2 playoff games. You won 2 playoff games last spring without Auston Matthews in the lineup. You could not win the biggest playoff game when Joseph Woll was hurt, okay, in Game 7, right? That to me that says a lot, okay? You can overcome the loss of a forward, a defenseman. You cannot overcome the loss of both these goaltenders, okay? If you're down to
both,
sure,
yes,
yeah.
I guess,
and I think you need 2. This is a league now where one guy does not suffice, okay? These guys do not have the mileage on their odometers or the proven mileage on their odometers to tell you that you can get by with 1, okay? And you do not want to be dipping into the Dennis Hildebees and Matt Murrays of the world at key times in this season to see what you have, because you know what you have back there. You've got guys that are a long way from being at the top of the NHL depth chart. Okay, they're decent, stop starter goaltenders or spot starter goaltenders in Hildeby and in Murray, but they're not guys you want to be counting on at a key moment.
No,
at the end of the season. So you need both these guys, Al's brother, in my view. I mean, that they've been absolutely essential to the success that this team has had so far, as tenuous as it is, as you point out, and as maybe as much as it's showing cracks as we enter the Christmas season here. If those guys are healthy and able, they can cover over a lot of those cracks.
You're right. That is true. Because you look at the first couple of months and even the last couple of weeks here, like the Toronto Maple Leafs haven't played very well, and their underlying numbers would support that. But the goaltenders have been able to really, really step up and make some big saves and keep the team into it and steal a couple of games. We've seen a couple of those steals where the Leafs are in the goal lead category on being on their end as opposed to getting goalied a few times
Which
this
we
month.
haven't seen.
No, usually it's the other way around.
Right.
And the Maple Leafs haven't been able to do that. But we're talking about, the captain. Like, that's the thing. He's the captain. Toronto's captain now, Auston Matthews. This team just isn't as good. They aren't nearly as deep when he's not in the lineup. And I understand goaltending is everything, but the biggest issue that this team has had come playoff time has been goals, not keeping pucks out of the net. They've been able to keep pucks out of the net no matter who's been in goal, realistically. Like, you look back at the last few seasons, whether it's been Samsonov, whether it's been Joseph Woll, whether it's been Jack Campbell at times, Freddie Anderson, like, they've had decent goaltending. They just haven't been able to score. And when Auston Matthews is at, and I know Auston Matthews has not been a massive goal scorer come playoff time either. I get that. But he also has not been relatively healthy come playoff time either. Like, you look back a couple of years ago when they finally booked their ticket into the second round for the first time in 20 years, they laid an absolute egg that year in round 2 against the Florida Panthers.
Yes.
Auston Matthews was a shell of himself in that series. He couldn't skate. He was so beaten up, he could not play. And that was really evident. And that team stood absolutely no chance. No matter how good the goaltending was, they couldn't muster up. They didn't score more than 2 goals in that entire series in a game. So for me, I think it's goal scoring. I think Auston Matthews is very clearly, to me, the guy who's got to lead this team out of it. I think that's what this team needs at this point, is for him to step up. But
they're both
100%. 100%. They are both important.
So I'm going to give the amulet for goalie health. You're going to give Auston Matthews more of the goat's blood or the fluid from the comb of the hen that you can get in Munich, Germany, injected into whatever.
Are we going back to Germany? Yeah, it didn't work the first time. Going back to,
if it worked for Usain Bolt and Tiger Woods, and
true.
Kobe Bryant, it's got to work for Auston Matthews eventually.
I also think, like, if you're giving them good health, I suppose, I think they also could use an injection of some depth down the middle. I think that's ultimately what this team is going to need. Like, we look forward. Yes, it'd be nice to get on Christmas. It'd be nice to get it on Boxing Day. But if you look forward towards the NHL trade deadline, I think the Leafs are going to be in the market for a middle six forward, whether that's a second line forward or a second line center or a third line center who can be a good matchup defensive center. I think that's ultimately what the team is going to have at the tippy top of their Christmas wish list come later on in the season. So if I could gift them that, it'd be one of those players, whether that's like a Scott Laughton would be kind of a good player who would fill a need of a shutdown third line center. You could go back to the Ryan O'Reilly. Try and bring him back in from St. Louis. He obviously has a really good relationship with the coach that's here now, with Craig Berube. He was they won together in St. Louis.
Yeah, but Ryan O'Reilly had a chance to be a Leaf, and he chose not to be a Leaf.
He did have a chance to be a Leaf, but who was the coach back then? Like, I think it's a different scenario, a different situation.
Oh, you're blaming it on Sheldon Keefe?
I'm not blaming it on Sheldon Keefe, but if it's a different situation in that point. So I think Ryan O'Reilly, and it's not going well in Nashville. I think he might want a mulligan on that one too, and maybe stick around in Toronto.
Well, let's why not bring back Ryan O'Reilly and Luke Schenn. I mean, the only time they've ever won a playoff series, both those guys were integral pieces to that team.
I mean, it's not a bad proposition here, Dave. Because again, you want to get Morgan Rielly going. Morgan Rielly arguably played his best hockey of his career in that series against Tampa Bay. Who's his partner? Luke Schenn. Now,
Leafs facing center crisis amid injuries, eyeing trade market for solutions. As the Toronto Maple Leafs battle through a growing injury list and a suspension, their lack of depth at the center position has become a glaring issue. According to Sportsnet's Elliotte Friedman in his latest 32 Thoughts article, the Leafs are among the teams exploring trade options to bolster their lineup. This effort is coming amid increasing competition from teams like the Chicago Blackhawks and Nashville Predators, who have also set their sights on improving their center depth. Friedman didn't mince words about the Leafs' predicament. The teams currently focusing on centers, including Chicago and Nashville, must consider when others will enter the market. Toronto will undoubtedly be one of those teams, he wrote. While the Blackhawks and Predators may have an edge in terms of cap space and assets, the Leafs remain a team to watch as the season progresses. The Leafs situation is urgent, with up to 7 forwards currently unavailable due to injury or suspension. Ryan Reeves is serving a 5-game suspension, while key players like Auston Matthews, upper body, Matthew Knies, upper body, Kaje Jarnkrok, groin/sports hernia, David Kampf, lower body, Max Domi, lower body, and Max Pacioretty, lower body, are all sidelined. The team has even considered temporarily shifting Mitch Marner to the center position, highlighting the severity of their depth issues. This isn't just a short-term concern for the Leafs. Depth at center has been a persistent challenge for the team, and while stopgap solutions like Marner could help in the interim, the front office appears keen to explore longer-term fixes. For fans of the blue and white, this has been a recurring theme. The Leafs' center depth often becomes a problem at the worst possible times. James Mirtle of The Athletic recently added more fuel to the speculation, naming several potential trade targets who could help the Leafs address their issues. Among them is Ryan O'Reilly, a familiar name for Toronto fans. O'Reilly, who signed a 4-year, $18 million deal with Nashville in 2023, might be a trade candidate if the Predators' underwhelming start to the season, 6-11-3, 31st in the league, prompts a rebuild. However, his steep price tag and history with the Leafs, including rejecting a free agency offer less than 2 years ago, make this a complex and potentially unlikely move. Other names mentioned by Mirtle include former Leaf Nazem Kadri, currently with Calgary, as well as players like Michael Granlund, Nick Jugstad, Brock Nelson, Yanni Gourde, Trent Frederic, Radek Faksa, and Sean Kuraly. While some of these options seem more plausible than others, it's clear that general manager Brad Treliving will need to get creative to find the right piece without mortgaging the team's future. Cap space remains one of the biggest obstacles for the Leafs. Unlike teams like Chicago and Nashville, which have more flexibility and assets, Toronto is walking a financial tightrope. As Friedman noted, competition will intensify as cap-constrained teams strive to create room. For the Leafs, that could mean waiting for the market to develop further, a risky move given their current needs. The situation also highlights the Leafs' ongoing struggle to build a roster that can withstand the grueling nature of an NHL season. Injuries are an inevitability in hockey, but Toronto's current predicament underscores the importance of depth, a quality the team has struggled to consistently maintain. Looking back on recent years, the Leafs have often leaned heavily on their star players, particularly Matthews, Marner, and William Nylander. While these players have delivered in spades, the lack of reliable depth options has left the team vulnerable in critical moments. The current crisis at center is merely the latest example of this recurring issue. Some fans have called for more aggressive moves from Treliving, arguing that now is the time to strike while the team's core is in its prime. Others, however, are more cautious, pointing to the dangers of overpaying for short-term fixes. Striking the right balance will be key, especially as the Leafs aim to keep their championship window open. Despite the challenges, there's no denying that Toronto has the talent to be a contender, provided they can patch up their lineup. The ongoing rumors and speculation surrounding potential trades show that the Leafs are at least exploring every avenue to strengthen their roster. For fans of the blue and white, this moment feels like a pivotal point in the season. With a lineup ravaged by injuries and a tough schedule ahead, the Leafs must act decisively to avoid falling behind in the standings. The addition of a dependable center could be the difference between weathering the storm or watching another season slip away. Whether it's O'Reilly, Kadri, or another surprise name, one thing is certain: the Leafs are under pressure to deliver. And for a fan base as passionate and loyal as Toronto's, there's no room for excuses. The time to act is now, and Leafs Nation is watching closely. As the trade deadline approaches, the stakes couldn't be higher. Will Treliving pull off a move that solidifies the Leafs' status as a contender, or will the search for center depth become yet another chapter in the team's long history of what-ifs? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure, it's never boring in Leafs land. As the Maple Leafs navigate this critical juncture, their fan base remains as vocal as ever. Toronto is a city that breathes hockey, and the pressure on Brad Treliving to make the right moves is immense. Every decision he makes, or doesn't make, will be scrutinized, from talk radio to social media, where Leafs Nation is already debating the merits of the various names being floated as potential trade targets. Among the louder debates is whether the team should prioritize a high-profile acquisition like Ryan O'Reilly or Nazem Kadri, or focus on a lower-cost, reliable center who can fill a supporting role without costing too many future assets. While O'Reilly's leadership and playoff experience make him an attractive option, his contract and recent history with the Leafs add layers of complexity to any potential reunion. Similarly, Kadri's gritty, two-way playstyle remains a fan favorite, but his cap hit and availability might render him an unrealistic target. Another factor complicating the Leafs situation is their tight salary cap. While Chicago and Nashville can make moves with relative ease due to their financial flexibility, Toronto must navigate a labyrinth of constraints to make any trade work. This likely means including salary retention or moving existing contracts to make room, which could drive up the cost of any potential deal. The question then becomes, how much are the Leafs willing to sacrifice to address their immediate needs? One potential trade partner generating buzz is the Seattle Kraken. Yanni Gourde, a dependable two-way center, has been mentioned as a possible target. Gould's versatility and championship pedigree from his time with Tampa Bay make him an appealing option. Seattle, however, is in playoff contention and may not be inclined to part with a key piece unless the Leafs can provide a substantial return. Another intriguing name is Brock Nelson of the New York Islanders. Nelson is a consistent scorer and reliable faceoff-man, qualities that would undoubtedly bolster Toronto's center depth. However, the Islanders are notoriously cautious when it comes to trades, and prying Nelson away would likely require a significant package, including picks or prospects that the Leafs may be hesitant to part with. For all the trade talk, some analysts believe the solution might come from within. Sheldon Keefe has shown a willingness to experiment with his lineup, and players like Pontus Holmberg or Fraser Minton could be given an opportunity to step up. While relying on less experienced players carries risks, it might be the Leafs' only option if the trade market proves too costly or slow to develop. Adding to the Leafs' urgency is the timing. The Atlantic Division remains one of the toughest in the league, with teams like Boston, Florida, and Tampa Bay continuing to dominate. Any prolonged slump could see Toronto slip further down the standings, putting their playoff hopes in jeopardy. For a team with Stanley Cup aspirations, failing to address their weaknesses could have catastrophic consequences. Brad Treliving's history as a general manager suggests he's not afraid to make bold moves. His time with the Calgary Flames was marked by blockbuster trades, including the acquisition of Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar in the Matthew Tkachuk deal. Leafs fans hope he brings that same decisiveness to Toronto, especially as the trade deadline looms. Beyond the immediate need for a center, this situation underscores a broader issue with the Leafs roster construction. Depth has been a perennial concern, and while Toronto boasts some of the league's top-end talent, their reliance on a handful of stars has left them vulnerable in moments like this. Moving forward, addressing this imbalance must be a priority for the front office if the team is to achieve sustained success. As the Leafs head into a critical stretch of the season, the next few weeks could define their trajectory.